Now, decent acceleration in the normal mode. I'm gonna put in an eco now. And as I do that, it really pushes you back on the pedal, so it's harder to accelerate in those conditions, but that's used to, of course, save on fuel mileage, but mostly for driving on the interstate. But for the $40,000 Highlander, still pretty impressive. And like I said earlier, I just drove a $50,000 Highlander Limited with all-wheel drive, same powertrain, but this one is front-wheel drive and it's an L. But I like that we have that standard Safety Sense 2.5, so behind the wheel it feels identical. Now, of course, you don't have power lumbar support. You don't have your heated, cooled seats. You don't have a sunroof. So for me personally, you don't have the captain's chair, so I would pay the extra 10 G's. But for people who are on a budget or who just don't need all that extra stuff, this L is a really good option, especially with this new engine here. I really like it. And I can already tell with these smaller 18s, the ride's just a little bit better and the road noise is just better as well. But really just like how the steering doesn't feel, it feels more nimble to me with the 18s on here, just a little bit. But I mean, still same great handling, great overall driving feel. Overall, the driving position is really good. I'm up higher, but I really can barely see the hood just from how it's sloped down, and it's actually underneath the windshield. Just everything was thought out with this vehicle, and I said this in the Limited. The center stack, just how it's laid out, was so smart. Everything is close to my fingers, but it's out of my way at the same time. So if I have something over here, I just reach for it. And then if I have to adjust the temperature specifically for myself, it's right there, but it's out of my way, so I'm not accidentally hitting it while I'm reaching for something or using the shifter, whatever. And really good visibility, specifically in the front for this vehicle. But yeah, definitely a bit quieter as opposed to the Limited I just drove. And I tested out the sound system. The JBL, of course, is fantastic, but the stock system is okay, especially on the XM. It's just not as crisp in my opinion. It's still plenty loud, but it just kind of rings your ears as opposed to giving you a nice, well-rounded sound. But what's really neat is even compared to the Limited, everything else is laid out the same. The shifter's in the same spot. You still have your push button start. AC controls are the same. Screen's smaller, but still in the same position. And it's still easy, flip of a switch to adjust your drive modes. And everything else is just laid out where it's supposed to be. Even the center console cubby space still in the same spot. I know, like, if you go from certain vehicles, the lowest trim level, you don't recognize the interior as opposed to the highest. But even the Limited compared to this L, everything is exactly the same except for the features, pretty much. So in eco mode now, let's go ahead and put in a sport mode. I'll lean the seat back, I need to lean up for these mirrors. So I've tested the manual out in terms of hard acceleration, but I haven't done it on the highway yet for the 2.4 turbo. So let's try that. I've said this before as well, that turbo puts in work. Most definitely. Very nice driving powertrain. I will say the engine for me, and I mean this is pretty much all Toyota engines other than the Supra, just a tad bit whiny on the top end. But I mean, for a 4-cylinder, I definitely expect that. But really, really just great. I just love how this drives. Now, in terms of reliability, will this last 300,000 miles like a V6 Highlander? Only time will tell with that. I hope it does. I hope it still has that same Toyota reliability with these new turbo engines they're coming out with, because they are pretty much last to the party when it came to that. Specifically with the Tundras being naturally aspirated, and then the Camry's not really getting a turbo still, and the Highlander just had that V6. So I think you might have had a I think it had a 4-cylinder option too, but it was naturally aspirated like a 2.5. So it's nice to get this turbo 4 and not feel underpowered. And you're especially saving on that highway fuel economy. I like to see what it's doing now. So I'm right at between 28 and 30 miles per gallon, cruising at 75 here. And I can't say enough about Toyota's 8 speeds that they've had in the Highlanders and the Camrys. Really good transmission. It drives really good for what it is. And the reliability has not been a huge issue that I've heard. And it's just it's a fun transmission to use, especially with it being shiftable. I just really like that. But all in all, it seemed like the road, I'm wondering if the sunroof, I just drove a limited all-wheel drive, like I said, like 10 times, but it was a lot louder in here, and I'm thinking it had to do with the sunroof and the roof rack now, because I just did the same drive in this, and it was so much more quiet in the cabin. So I'm thinking, because I didn't think of it at first, but I'm thinking that's why it was a little bit louder in that limited all-wheel drive, because it had the roof rack and it had the panoramic roof. And this one, with it not having a roof, even with a roof rack, is not as loud. But like I said in that limited review, everything here just makes sense. Really love the vehicle, and if you want to save 10 grand, definitely take a look at the new 2023 Toyota Highlander in the L trim level.